left to die in the snow. The wind howled across the frozen plains of planet Velar. The snow fell heavy and fast, covering everything in a white sheet. 3 alien sisters lay in the cold, their bodies weak, their eyes barely open. They were not warriors, not mothers, not valuable in their world. They were infertile, and in their society, that meant one thing: worthless. Their own people had left them here to die, alone in the snow. Syra, the eldest, shivered as she wrapped her long arms around her 2 sisters. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the cold, but the glow was fading fast. "We were born together," she whispered. "We will die together." Elin, the middle sister, tried to speak, but her voice cracked. She coughed, a soft sound lost in the wind. Nomi, the youngest, had already passed out, her body still, her breath shallow. The sky above was dark, even though it was daytime. Storm clouds covered the light of the twin suns. Everything was silent, except for the wind and the beating of their slowing hearts. In their culture, fertility meant power, legacy, the right to live. Without it, you were seen as a curse. Their parents had fought for them, but the leaders didn't care. They were taken during the night and dropped from a transport ship into the wild snowlands. Now, death was close, and there was no one coming to help. But then, a sound broke through the storm. A soft hum, low and steady. It wasn't natural, it was a machine. Syra turned her head with effort, her eyes blinking against the snow. A dark figure moved in the white mist. It walked slowly but firmly, each step pushing deep into the snow. It was wearing a suit, bulky, with lights on the chest and helmet. Not one of their kind, not alien, a human. Humans were rare on Velar. Most had been chased off or killed. But this one had survived. He stopped a few meters away from the sisters, his head tilted as if thinking. He looked at them, all 3 lying there, dying. He could have turned away. He could have left them like everyone else. But instead, he walked forward and knelt beside them. He removed one of his thermal packs and placed it on Syra's chest. Warmth spread slowly through her body. She gasped, and her eyes widened. Elin tried to move, to protect her sister, but her arms barely lifted. The human raised a hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. His voice came through the helmet, quiet but firm. "You're not dying today," he said. He looked at each of them, his eyes filled with something they had never seen before. Not pity, not fear, compassion. He activated a flare and shot it into the sky. The red light burned bright against the gray clouds. Then, without waiting, he lifted Nomi into his arms. He moved quickly but carefully, heading toward the dark shape in the distance. It was an entrance, hidden, metal, half covered in snow. He returned moments later for Elin, then Syra. His arms were strong, but his breath was heavy. Even with the suit, the cold fought him every second. Inside the shelter, the air was warm, the lights dim. Old tech panels blinked softly, powered by backup energy. It was not a perfect home, but it was safe. The human placed each sister on a padded surface, covering them in heated blankets. He removed his helmet, revealing a tired face with a short beard and deep eyes. He checked their pulses, gave them water, injected something from his medical kit. All this without saying another word. For hours, he sat near them, watching, waiting. Finally, Syra opened her eyes fully and looked at him. She tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, she reached out and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. Outside, the storm continued. But inside, something new had begun. 3 alien sisters, abandoned to die, now had a reason to live. And one lonely human, hiding from his past, had just changed their future. Neither side knew what this bond would become. But fate had brought them together in the snow. Not as enemies, not as strangers, but as something new, something not written in any book. A connection that could change both their worlds. Forever. The man who was never supposed to be here. The storm outside had passed, but the silence inside was heavier than snow. Syra sat up slowly, her body still sore but alive. Elin lay nearby, eyes closed, breathing deep and steady. Nomi rested with a blanket pulled to her chin, barely moving. The room was warm, filled with a strange hum. Lights blinked softly along the walls, old Earth technology patched with alien metal. It didn't feel like home, but it didn't feel like death either. The man who had saved them stood by a panel, typing slowly. He hadn't said much since bringing them inside. Just worked in silence, like a ghost who had done this all before. His name, they would later learn, was Raiden. But to them in that moment, he was just the man who didn't walk away. Syra watched him closely, her eyes still dim but sharper now. This human didn't act like the others. He didn't look curious, or afraid, or angry. He looked tired, like someone who had been fighting a war no one else could see. He placed a warm drink beside Syra and nodded once. Then walked back to his chair, sat down, and stared at the floor. For a while, no one spoke. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of old air filters. Then, a soft sound from Nomi, her fingers tapping the edge of the table in a rhythm. Syra recognized it, a childhood signal. She was awake, and she was scared. Elin slowly opened her eyes, reaching for her sisters. The three of them were alive, together. But none of them understood why. Why had this man saved them? Why was he living alone on a dead planet? And why did he look like he had already lost everything that mattered? Raiden finally broke the silence. "You're not the first ones they threw out here," he said quietly. "I found others years ago." Syra tried to respond, but her voice was still weak. Instead, she pointed to her chest, then toward him, a question in her eyes. He understood, somehow. "I came here on a mission," he said. "But the mission's over, and they left me too." He looked up at her, and for the first time, his eyes showed pain, not the sharp kind, but the deep kind, the kind that stays. "There was a girl," he added, voice low, "my daughter." He didn't say more, and he didn't need to. The weight of those two words filled the room. Syra touched her own chest again, then the space between them. She didn't have the words, but he understood that too. He nodded. "You lost someone too," he said. "All of you did." The sisters weren't just infertile. They were once meant to be leaders, dreamers, part of the future. But their world had decided they were broken, thrown away like failed machines. Raiden stood and walked to a metal box. He opened it, pulled out a small device, and placed it on the table. It flickered to life, a basic translator module, outdated but working. "I built this for someone else," he said. "She never got to use it." He looked at Nomi. "Maybe you will." The device buzzed softly, scanning sound waves and facial expressions. Syra leaned closer, and for the first time, a few basic words formed on the small screen. Not perfect, but enough. "Why help us?" The screen read, repeating her intention. Raiden didn't answer right away. He looked out the small window, where the storm had left the world silent and white. "Because no one helped me," he said at last. The sisters didn't understand everything, but they felt the truth in his voice. He hadn't saved them because they were useful. He hadn't saved them for reward, or science, or glory. He had saved them because he couldn't bear to see more life fade away. As the night came, the sisters huddled close again, but not from cold. This time, it was safety they shared. And across the room, the human sat awake, his eyes not on them, but on the shadows. He wasn't afraid of monsters outside. He was afraid of hope, the kind that sneaks in when you're not ready. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface of the planet, a forgotten system came online. Old sensors blinked awake, detecting movement, heat, sound, life. Far away, something else had noticed the sisters were still alive. Something that had once sworn they never would be. Speaking without words. Days passed, but none of them counted. Time inside the bunker moved in silence, in breaths and looks. Not in hours or clocks. The alien sisters healed slowly. Their skin, once pale and cracked from the cold, now glowed gently. They spoke no language Raiden knew, but still they spoke. Not with words, but with eyes, with patterns of light across their skin. With tiny sounds, a click of the tongue, a sharp inhale, a hum rising in pitch. At first, Raiden thought it was random. But then he saw the rhythm, the order, the meaning. One night, he was repairing a broken scanner when Syra stood beside him. She didn't touch anything, didn't speak. She just watched the machine, her eyes focused. Then her skin lit up in waves, cool blue, then bright white, then sudden red. The scanner beeped, blinked, and rebooted itself. Raiden stared at the screen, shocked. He hadn't touched anything. He looked at Syra. She looked back at him, no expression, just the smallest flicker of light along her cheek. Yellow. Raiden didn't know what that meant, but deep down, it felt like a smile. The next morning, Elin sat near the water recycler, staring at it without blinking. When Raiden walked in, she pointed to the panel before he said anything. "Yeah," he said slowly. "I was going to fix that." She pointed again, then made a soft clicking sound with her tongue. The panel lit up, working again. Raiden stepped back, eyes wide. These girls weren't just survivors. They were something else, connected to machines. But how and why? They couldn't speak his words. But each day they spoke more clearly. They told him when they were hungry, when they were cold, when Nomi had a nightmare and needed someone near her while she slept. And Raiden, who had once gone years without speaking to anyone, found himself talking more than ever. Even if no one answered back, he told them about Earth, about rain that smelled like dirt and metal, about stars that didn't blink and roads that led to nowhere. He told them about his daughter and how she used to draw stars on the walls of her room. The sisters listened without moving. They didn't blink much, but he could feel they were listening, not just hearing, but feeling every word. One night, while they all slept, the power flickered. A red light blinked quietly on one of the old control panels. Raiden didn't notice it at first, but something else did. Far away, beyond the ice, in a ruined satellite buried under years of snow, a signal lit up. It had no voice, no sound, just a single message in code. Unknown energy pattern detected. Somewhere in orbit, an old system still lived. A system that wasn't supposed to wake up. Now, it was awake and watching. Back in the bunker, Nomi stood in front of a broken console. Her small fingers moved over the cold surface. She wasn't trying to fix it. She was talking to it. The metal flickered beneath her hand, like it recognized her. Raiden entered the room and froze. He watched as the machine responded, slowly, like it was unsure. Then Nomi turned and looked at him, her eyes glowing softly. She raised one hand and tapped her fingers twice on her chest, then pointed at him. The translator beeped, screen lighting up. "You are not like the others," it said. Raiden stepped closer. "You either," he whispered. In that moment, something passed between them. Not trust, not yet, but something stronger, recognition. A quiet agreement that neither of them belonged where they came from. But maybe, just maybe, they belonged here, with each other. Outside, the snow had started to fall again. But deep beneath it, old machines were stirring. And something, or someone, was listening. The power they were never meant to have. Raiden didn't sleep much anymore. He said it was because of the bunker alarms. The old systems always buzzing, blinking, complaining. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was, he was scared. Not of the sisters, but of what they could become. It started with small things. The doors in the bunker opening before they touched them. Old wires lighting up when Nomi walked by. Screens showing symbols Raiden didn't recognize, but they did. Syra spent hours tracing those symbols with her fingers. She didn't know how she knew them. She just did. Raiden had seen alien tech before. Powerful, confusing, sometimes alive. But this was something else. This wasn't learned. It was born. One night, when he thought they were asleep, Raiden opened the black case. Inside was an old holochip, encrypted, damaged but still active. He plugged it into the console. A broken file played, data logs, written in the language of the sisters' people. The translator tried its best. The words came out slow, jagged, but the message was clear. Gene type, Teach, 9, unstable, cannot breed, cannot be controlled. Capable of tech communion. Purge recommended. Raiden's hands clenched the edge of the console. He stared at the words, reading them over and over. It wasn't infertility that got the sisters thrown away. It was fear. Their people hadn't discarded them because they were useless. They had tried to erase them because they were dangerous. They were born with a rare ability, tech binding. A lost genetic trait, possibly ancient. It let them connect to machines with thought, with feeling. Not control exactly, but communion. The kind of power that could turn one mind into a weapon, or into a miracle. Raiden shut off the chip and turned around. Syra was standing behind him. She had seen it, all of it. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stared at the screen, and then at Raiden. He waited for her to be angry, to run, to hide, to break something. But instead, she walked over and placed her hand on the console. The screen lit up in full color, no delay, no lag. Symbols danced across it like water. Then words, clear, steady, written in her language and his, side by side. They called us broken. We were only ever waking up. Raiden stepped back, breath caught in his throat. What had he brought into his bunker? What had he saved from the snow? Later, while Syra and Elin slept, Nomi sat by the far wall. She hummed softly, a tune Raiden didn't recognize. But the bunker did. Old pipes rattled, a screen blinked awake that hadn't worked in years. And somewhere below the floor, a machine began to turn. Raiden walked toward her, slowly. "Nomi," he said gently, "what are you doing?" She looked at him with wide eyes. Then she pointed toward the floor. The translator buzzed to life. "It's calling us," the screen read. Raiden froze. "What is?" Nomi looked down again, then touched the ground. A low hum rose through the room. Metal shifting, ancient code waking. Before he could move, a hidden hatch opened under their feet. A cold blue light spilled upward. Steps led down into darkness. None of this had ever shown on the blueprints. The sisters stepped forward as if they had always known it was there, as if they were meant to find it. Raiden grabbed a flashlight, heart pounding. He didn't like this. But he also knew the past wasn't buried anymore. Far above, in orbit, something moved. A ship, black and silent, hidden among the stars. Inside it, a single eye blinked open, a surveillance unit still connected to old signals. It had detected the tech binding signature. The message had been received. Back on Velar, the bunker door sealed shut behind them. The sisters began to descend, one step at a time. Raiden followed, gun on his back, questions in his mind. He didn't know what was waiting down there. But something deep inside him whispered. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was destiny. The enemy above, the secret below. The stairs were cold, metal, and silent. Each step echoed like a warning. Raiden followed the sisters down, flashlight in one hand, weapon in the other. Syra led the way, her skin glowing brighter with every step. Elin moved like she already knew this place. Nomi walked slowly, one hand brushing the walls as if feeling for memories that weren't hers. At the bottom was a door, not locked, not sealed. Waiting. Raiden hesitated. "This shouldn't be here," he said under his breath. Nomi looked back at him, her eyes full of calm. She touched the door, and it opened with a soft hiss. Inside was not a bunker, not a lab, not a shelter. It was a cradle. The room was circular, with walls made of smooth black metal. Floating above the center was a sphere, pulsing faint light like a heartbeat. It wasn't just a machine. It was alive. Raiden stepped closer, and every hair on his body stood up. He felt like something was looking back at him, not with eyes, but with awareness. Syra walked to the edge of the platform, reached toward the sphere. It didn't resist. Instead, it pulsed in rhythm with her touch. Lights raced across the room, awakening panels, screens, ancient systems. Then images. Holograms blinked to life. Star maps, genetic scans, records of an old experiment. It was all about them. The sisters weren't accidents. They were created, not by nature, not by birth, but by a hidden program, a genetic experiment designed by their own species and later erased from history. Raiden stared at the data, trying to piece it together. This was a project, he said slowly, a secret one, hidden beneath exile zones. The truth was ugly. They were never meant to be born. And once they were, their creators buried them. And the truth, beneath ice and silence. Before they could learn more, the entire room shook. A deep rumble echoed from above. Raiden's comms unit blinked red. External breach detected. They rushed back upstairs, but it was too late. The front entrance had already been blown open. The snow outside was stained black from ship exhaust. And standing in the smoke were figures in heavy armor, enforcers. Not soldiers, not rescuers. These were execution units, sent to erase what should not exist. One of them stepped forward, scanning the air. He raised a device, and it began to beep rapidly. "They're still alive," he said coldly. "Proceed with deletion." Raiden grabbed his rifle, ducked behind a metal console. He didn't have enough ammo, and definitely not enough time. But he wasn't going to let them take the sisters. Not again. The first blast hit the side wall, tearing through it like paper. Elin screamed as sparks flew past her. Nomi ran to her, shielding her with her body. Cyrus stood still, her skin pulsing faster. Then she closed her eyes. The lights in the bunker went out. For a second, everything was black. Then came a low hum, from the floor, from the walls, from her. The old tech, the same tech that once rejected her, now bent to her will. Drones dropped from the ceiling, inactive for years. They came online, One by one, lights glowing red. Raiden watched in disbelief as Syra raised her hand. The drones responded. They didn't fly. They circled her, like guardians. Like they had always been hers. Outside, the enforcers began to advance. But this time, the sisters were not hiding. Nomi activated the ground defenses, using just her touch. Elin sent a pulse through the communication systems, jamming all signals. Raiden fired a shot, hitting one of the armored figures in the chest. The rest returned fire, but now the drones joined in, blasting from above, blocking their path. It wasn't a full war, not yet, but it was the first strike, and it told the enemy something very dangerous. The sisters were no longer prey. They were becoming something else. One of the enforcers managed to escape, injured, but alive. He ran back to his ship, activated a long-range beacon. One final message was sent to deep space. 3 words, encrypted but clear. They have awakened. Inside the bunker, Raiden stood beside the sisters, blood on his sleeve, anger in his chest. Syra looked at him, then at the glowing sphere still alive beneath the floor. "We can't stay here anymore," Raiden said. Elin nodded, her hand already tracing new symbols on the wall. Nomi reached out and touched Raiden's arm. The translator blinked. "If they come again," it said, "we won't run." The battle for the forgotten. The sky over Velar turned red, not from the sun, but from arrival. Dozens of black ships broke through the clouds. Silent, fast, without warning. Enforcer-class destroyers. Not for capture, only for erasure. Inside the bunker, alarms screamed. Screens lit up, one after another, until the system froze from overload. Raiden ran to the console, tried to push back the lockout. Too late. They had been found. Syra stood near the sphere, her body glowing brighter than ever before. The air around her shimmered with raw energy. Elin tapped into the drones, commanding them like they were extensions of her own hands. Nomi sat on the floor, eyes closed, whispering to the walls. The bunker listened. Raiden loaded his weapon. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. "This is it," he said. "They're not coming to talk." The sisters didn't flinch. They didn't cry. They had been left to die once. This time, they would fight. The first blast hit the surface, a sonic charge that tore open the snow and ice. The roof shook, chunks of metal fell from above. Raiden shielded Nomi with his body, pulling her out of the way just in time. Blood ran down his arm. He didn't stop. Drones launched from hidden pods, slicing through the air like knives. They moved fast, targeting the enemy troops as they landed. But there were too many. Waves of black-armored enforcers stormed toward the base. Weapons glowing, faces hidden behind visors. Syra raised her hand, and the ground responded. Machines long buried beneath Velar awakened. Turrets burst from the snow, automated defenses from a forgotten age. They didn't just shoot, they hunted. Inside, Elin screamed, falling to her knees. A feedback surge hit her mind. Too many systems at once. Too much data. She tried to filter it, but the tech binding was pushing back. Trying to use her, not the other way around. Raiden knelt beside her, placing his hand on her back. "You don't have to control it," he whispered. "Just trust it." Elin closed her eyes, slowed her breathing. Let the machines feel her, not follow her. And suddenly, everything aligned. The lights pulsed once, then fell into perfect sync. Outside, the enemy began to lose. Their ships jammed, weapons misfired, armor systems glitched. They were strong, but now they were fighting a world they didn't understand. In the chaos, a shadow slipped through. A high-ranking enforcer, moving fast and silent through the broken walls. He reached the command room, where Raiden stood unguarded, injured, tired. The enforcer raised his weapon. Syra turned too late. The shot fired. Raiden fell. Blood spread across the floor. The world stopped moving. Nomi screamed, not out loud, but through the walls, through the power grid, through the planet. Everything around her responded. The lights turned black, then white, then shattered into pieces. A pulse of pure force blasted from her body. It hit the enforcer mid-stride, throwing him across the room, slamming him into a wall. His armor cracked, his body went still. Raiden coughed, still alive, but barely. Syra pressed her hands against his wound, glowing light flooding from her palms. It wasn't medicine. It was memory. A flash of Raiden's daughter, laughing, running, lost. Syra had never seen her, but she gave the memory back to him. clear, whole, like it had just happened. His pain faded, not from healing, but from hope. Outside, the last wave of enforcers fell. The remaining ships powered down, confused, lost without commands. The sisters stood at the edge of the ruined entrance, the wind whipping around them. They were bruised, bleeding, shaking, but they were standing. Above them, the clouds parted, revealing the stars. For the first time, the sky didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a future. Raiden joined them at the entrance, limping. He looked at the wreckage, the fire, the bodies. Then at the sisters. "You didn't just survive," he said. "You won." Far above, one final transmission escaped. Encrypted, ancient, and sent far beyond local space. It carried no words. Only a signal. A code that meant one thing to those who understood it. The Forbidden Ones have risen. Not cursed, but chosen. The fire had gone out. The sky above Velar was quiet again. The ships were gone, the weapons silent, the snow untouched except for scars. The bunker still stood, barely. Its walls cracked, its systems burned out. But inside, there was warmth. Not from machines, but from life. Raiden sat on the edge of the cot, bandaged, pale. He had lost blood, time, and pieces of himself. But when he looked across the room at the three sisters, he didn't feel broken. He felt whole. Syra stood at the console, rebuilding the damaged translator. Elin moved through the base slowly, rewiring damaged lines with her bare hands. Nomi sat by the glowing sphere, now calm, no longer pulsing, resting. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Their bond had gone beyond language. They had fought together, bled together, survived something that was never meant to be survived. And now, they had a choice. The underground structure, the cradle, was more than just a relic. It held star charts, coordinates, systems that hadn't been touched in centuries. It wasn't just a lab. It was a launch pad. Syra brought the information to Raiden. He read the map slowly, eyebrows raised. "These aren't just stars," he said. "They're colonies. Lost ones, abandoned ones, erased like the sisters. Forgotten corners of space where failed experiments, lost species, and broken creations were sent to vanish." Raiden looked at the girls. "You're not the only ones," he said. They nodded. They already knew. Outside, a new ship waited. Built from parts of the fallen Enforcer craft, fused with the cradle's design. It wasn't sleek, or fast, or beautiful, but it was theirs. Raiden stood in front of it, staring up. His legs were weak, his arms still in a sling. But he had never stood taller. Syra joined him, eyes glowing. Behind her, Elin and Nomi followed. All of them wearing new gear, repaired armor, shaped to fit their own kind. Raiden turned to them. "You sure about this?" he asked. Nomi stepped forward, touching his arm gently. The translator buzzed softly. "We are not weapons," it said. "We are signals." Elin tapped a symbol onto the ship's hull. It lit up softly, a mark from their cradle. A message to anyone who could read it. Not cursed, it meant chosen. The ship powered up. The engines glowed. Raiden sat at the controls, unsure if he was ready. Then Syra took the seat beside him. She didn't speak, just placed her hand over his. "You're one of us now," her eyes said. "Not a rescuer, not a protector, but a survivor, a brother, a guide." The ship rose into the sky, past the snow, past the scars, past the planet that once tried to kill them, and into the stars, toward the ones still waiting, still hidden, still lost. Back on Velar, silence returned. But deep underground, the sphere lit up once more, not in warning, but in welcome, because now, somewhere out there, three sisters who were never meant to live, and a human who was never meant to care, were writing a new story, not one of war, but one of return, of recovery, of hope, because in the end, they were never the broken ones. They were the beginning, the first to rise, the first to fight back, the first to say, "We are not finished." Not even close.